Welcome back, guys. In today's video, I am going to do a full walkthrough of my garage golf simulator. I am about to replace a bunch of stuff in here, and I really wanted to kind of do a full tour to document how it is now before I replace a bunch of stuff. That way, if there's any questions about products that I used to have or things that you see in older videos, I'll have this video to point you to. I've been through pretty much two versions of this garage golf simulator. The first version was whenever I first started out with this stuff. I had a hitting net, a mat, and a Mevo Plus. I used the Net Return Pro and loved it. And I had a TV mounted on the wall right there, and that was pretty much it. That was enough to get me hooked. Then I went into the full Carl's enclosure, different launch monitors, and really started this YouTube channel. And so this is kind of version 2, if you will. We're going to version 3 in the next week or so. So yeah, I thought let's start from the top, go down to the bottom. Now, everything that I mentioned, if I can link to it, I will put a link down in the description. A lot of those links are going to be affiliate links. So if you do make a purchase through one of those, I'll earn a small commission. Helps me out, and hopefully it will point you in the right direction for something that is right for you. So starting from top to bottom, first thing is probably the newest thing. That's these track lights that I have overhead. I really was not too concerned about track lighting. That's them right there, just in front of the projector. They're pointing down right over my hitting mat. Really, one of them is pointed at the hitting strip. The other two are kind of pointed at me, and they're angled away from the screen. Now, I do have all my garage lights on right now, so it's going to be pretty bright in here, but I do like to turn the overhead fluorescent lights off. I'll just leave a single LED bulb over here turned on for kind of ambient lighting and the track lights, and that's it. Dimming the lights makes the picture look unbelievable. Just getting your lighting right is probably one of the best things you can do for picture quality. That was something that I ignored for a long time and only recently put that track light up there. I got it on Amazon. It was $33 and it plugs in actually. So it's just got a plug. I ran the wire across the ceiling and down the wall with an extension cord, and it's plugged in over there, so no electrical work, and it makes a huge difference. And then going on from there is the projector. I have the BenQ TH671ST. That was $799 from Carl's Place. It's the only projector that I've had, and it is 1080p, 3000 lumens, so not anything fancy at all. In fact, I would say it's probably one of the base level 1080 projectors that are used for golf simulators. You can obviously use really any projector that works, but this is kind of the one that you see at that $800 range. The feature that I did use when installing it was the zoom. I used the projector calculator to figure out about where to position it, and then I wanted it just slightly closer because then I could just adjust the zoom just a tad to fill up the whole screen with setting a custom resolution on my PC. But if I was just a little bit too far away, well, I can't zoom out. So just a couple inches in there on the edges, and just then tap that zoom slider just a tiny bit to get the perfect fill. That's how I did it. It does have vertical keystone correction, but not horizontal. That is helpful because it is pointed overhead and angled down. And then I use that vertical keystone correction to make it from like a trapezoid to a straight rectangle. Now, because it doesn't have horizontal keystone direction, it has to be mounted perfectly center to your screen. I had to remount it a couple times. One of the things I remember is that obviously the lens is not in the center of the projector. It's actually off to the side, and you've got to center the lens, not the projector. I also used a really cheap projector mount from Amazon. That projector mount was 20 bucks. It works, but I will say that it is a pain. If I ever walk by with a ladder and just bump it a little bit, I'm like, oh man. Oh, I gotta go back up there and try to get it pointed just right. It's hard to tighten and hold in place. That may be something that might be worth spending more money on. Overall, I would say that this projector, it gets the job done. Nothing that really blows me away, but I don't really have any complaints. The only thing is that if I were to do it again, I would probably spend some more money to get horizontal keystones so that just put it where you want if I wanted it slightly to the side. I get a lot of questions that it actually is pretty much directly overhead whenever I'm playing. That's pretty much right where I would stand. And I do have it plugged in, just running the cable along the ceiling over to an outlet for my garage door opener that was already there, so it was pretty simple from that point on. I did add this blackout curtain over here on the right side of my simulator, really just to hide all my garage junk. It also does kind of block a little bit of ambient light from the screen, and I just hung it up there with some hooks that I had mounted in the ceiling. This curtain I found on Amazon, it was 35 bucks. I would like to do one of those sliding curtains that you can get from Carl's Place, but unfortunately my attic door is right over this curtain, so I couldn't run a track across it. So I do just have to unhook that whenever I need to get into the attic. That bothered me for a long time, and eventually I was like, you know what, I'm overthinking this. I just need to hang a curtain up. And that's what I did. Now we've got the actual enclosure and screen. So I get a lot of questions about the size of this enclosure. It is the 8 by 10.5 foot Carl's Place C-Series enclosure. The width I have here, wall to wall, is 12 feet. The 10.5 foot wide enclosure fits perfectly. I've got maybe like 8 inches on that side and 4 or 5 inches on this side. I don't know exactly, but just enough space to get it put together in there and not be pressing up against one of the walls. The options that I got with this enclosure, I did go with the premium screen, and I did get the pipe framing kit. Basically, they ship all the pipes to you. You don't have to cut anything. It's literally just pull it out of the box and assemble. And that's pretty much it. I think in the review that I did of the enclosure, I mentioned the gutter foam. I just went to Home Depot or Lowe's, bought gutter foam and put it around the perimeter. I did not use the foam that you can buy from Carl's Place. The gutter foam, from the hardware store is much less expensive and pretty much does the same thing, I think, and it fits in those flaps perfectly. I did start out with the original enclosure. That was the one that had the kind of flap on the bottom with a sandbag that ran across there to keep it down. And then when they came out with this C-Series enclosure, I did like a retrofit kit. I definitely like this version more. The difference is this screen goes all the way to the floor. It's got a kind of like a wire cable that runs across the bottom of the screen, and there's a couple of angle connectors for the back to hold that wire cable through. That's pretty much the only difference. And obviously it's a different screen to hold the wire as well. But those are pretty much the only differences. So if you already have a Carl's Place enclosure, my recommendation is wait till your screen wears out, and you're gonna wanna replace that anyways, and then do the C-Series upgrade. I think it's a better look. I'm able to get the screen kind of tighter with less bounce back, and I do like the image going all the way to the floor there. Yeah, Carl's C-Series enclosure, 8 by 10.5. The price on that with the options that I mentioned altogether, it was $1,854. Moving along, still going top to bottom, let's talk about my little putting green down here. A lot of people do the turf from their hitting mat, and I considered that for quite a while, and in fact, that may be what you see in version 3 of the simulator. But for this, I went with the Big Moss putting green. It's more of a carpet. You may not know this, but they do this stuff for simulators. You just have to call them and they will make it to a custom size, which is what I did. The size that I've got for this is 123 inches by 110 inches. I actually had it fitting perfectly with that original Carl's Place enclosure that had the flap at the bottom. But now that it goes straight down, it doesn't fit as well. I've got a gap up here next to me on the hitting mat and a small gap at the screen. Doesn't really bother me too much. When I looked into this, I really wanted just the best putting practice area that I could get, and I like the idea of going with the carpet instead of turf. They actually say that they think this runs at like a 13 stimp. The carpet itself is about 1/4 inch thick. It does have a finished edge all the way around. Doesn't really work for lining it up with your hitting mat. I mean, it could, but you're gonna have a little of a hem on the edge that it's gonna roll over. That's what you need to know about it. They can customize it. I actually called them. You can talk to the owner. He gives out his cell phone number. It's basically like, hey, if you get it, you're installing it on a weekend, call me, I'll walk you through it. As for the install, it's pretty much just unroll the carpet. There's some foam underneath that goes from flat all the way up to about 1 inch thick. And that inch thickness is what allows for the putting cups to be able to have the ball that drops in rather than just putting to a target. So you've got nice flags and putting cups, like I said. It's a very nice putting practice area. They included this little ramp where the ball can roll down the ramp, but really for me, it's more of just rolling the ball back up it since my hitting mat is not flush. So yeah, I kind of just thought that this would be the easiest kind of out of the box solution and I would have a nice putting area, and it was. Underneath the putting turf, I could just have put it direct on the concrete of my garage floor, but I already had these 1-inch thick puzzle piece foam tiles underneath this whole area. My enclosure is sitting on top of them. I bought those on Amazon. I got 2 sets of 18, so 36 tiles total, and I spent $215. Now, the Big Moss putting turf for that size that I mentioned, after freight, it was $1,245. The freight on that was $375 to Texas, where I'm at, so really a big chunk of that was the freight. That's kind of a bummer, but I don't know how else you're gonna get a giant roll here without that. That's pretty much the flooring. Let's talk about the actual hitting mat. So as you may know, I use the SIGPro Softy hitting mat. I did a bunch of reviews on hitting mats. They're all on my channel, and the SIGPro Softy is the one that I landed on. I still love it. The cost on it is $1,100. To me, it was the best balance of both realistic feel and softness. So, you know, I wasn't worried about injury compared to some of the other mats. I will be sticking with this mat. Some of the downsides are that it is 2.5 inches thick. It makes lining up other flooring to it a little bit more difficult. And a lot of people have asked about wear and tear on it. I will say it's pretty interesting. The hitting strip itself started to show wear pretty much immediately within the first several weeks. And then from then on, it stayed about the same. It's just that it uses the longer fibers on the hitting strip. And when you're hitting through that, the ends of those fibers get kind of frayed or burnt or something pretty quickly. You're gonna see where you hit, but didn't affect anything. We're about a year in, and I still love it, so I'm sticking with it. I did take some extra foam tiles, stacked them on top of each other, 2 layers of 1-inch tiles, and then I had some extra turf just big enough to make basically a 2-foot by 6-foot runway that is on the back of my hitting mat. Whenever I want to use my Mevo Plus, I take that runway, turn it around, and put my Mevo Plus on the end of it. So I've got a nice 2-foot even surface all the way from the Mevo Plus to the hitting strip, and it works out really well. I pretty much just duct tape those foam tiles together. That's not the best solution, but it works for now. Pretty much the turf with those 2 1-inch tiles lines up perfectly flush to the SIGPro Softy, so it really works out well. And I don't have to have that runway out there all the time. When I'm not using it, I line it up again with the back of my hitting mat, and I also hide some wires and things underneath there, like whenever I'm working with swing cameras or whatever else. The parts on the end, on the left and right side of my hitting mat, are pretty much just an old hitting mat that I didn't like. It really caused a lot of pain in the elbow, and I cut it up into strips. That's pretty much just to have some extra stuff on the side. That's pretty much it for the hitting mat and the flooring stuff on the ground. Computer, that's another one that I get a lot of questions about. So I bought this laptop on Black Friday 2 years ago. The cost on this was actually $1,000. It is an Asus Tough Dash gaming laptop. It's got an Intel Core i7, 16 gigabytes of DDR5 memory. It's got an NVIDIA RTX 3070 graphics card and 512 gigabyte solid state hard drive. On this laptop, I run GSPro at 1080p ultra setting. I have 0 issues with GSPro whatsoever. On FSX Play, it is much more hard on the laptop. It strains it a lot more. I run that not on like the ultra setting, but the high setting, and it works just fine for that. At this point, I am kind of running out of ports on the laptop whenever I'm talking about swing cameras that I'm reviewing currently at this time, and also like things like the balance optics from Uneekor that requires Ethernet or USB. So I do see myself upgrading to a gaming desktop just to kind of get some of that stuff out of the way. And then you should also mention that if you go with a laptop, you're not gonna get as good of performance as you would with a gaming desktop. I mentioned I've got the NVIDIA RTX 3070 card. That's not the same as a 3070 card in a desktop. So the laptop version is a little bit more dumbed down to fit within the laptop. So if you are going with a laptop, I would recommend going even higher on the graphics card than you would with a desktop. So 3070 for 1080p is what I went with. 3060 is really the recommended, but with a laptop, I wanted to go one step higher. And whenever I go to a gaming desktop, I'm pretty much gonna go with 4K going forward. Now it is on a laptop stand on wheels. Got this on Amazon for 51 bucks. It's okay, I wish it were a little bit higher. I find myself sometimes bending over, and that would be something that I would like to clean up with the gaming desktop setup in the future, where I could get a monitor that's a little bit more eye level. And obviously it's a laptop monitor, so a little bit small. Now you may ask about like extra stuff that I've got in here. This is kind of like a cribs version of showing off the simulator. This is kind of my golf stuff. I've got extra bags filled with old putters and irons and training aids. I've got the Tour Striker Smart Ball that I like to use a lot. I've got this hanger. This one is kind of tough for me. Golf Forever, workout stuff. Tried it for a month or so, and yeah, it's been on the wall ever since. Other than that, I got a box on the ground filled with odds and ends, different cables, bungee cords from Carl's Place, connectors. Now you may ask about club storage. I don't have any of that. When I'm not making YouTube videos, I pretty much just back my golf cart right up to the simulator. So I just turn around, grab a club out, and put it back in my bag when I'm done. That way, when I'm ready to head to the course, my bag is already in the cart and I can just jump in the cart and go. That's pretty much the behind the scenes look. Okay, so if I added everything up correctly, before we even talk about launch monitors, we are at $6,352 for the enclosure, projector, lighting, flooring, hitting mat, computer. If you watch the channel, you know I've got multiple launch monitors that I like to keep and create content with as they get updated and as they're released, getting reviewed and all that. Starting at the probably bottom end, I've got the SkyTrack Plus that is priced just under $3,000. I've got the Mevo Plus limited edition that comes included with the Pro package and the face impact location. I've got the Uneekor Eye Mini, and then on the high end, I've got the Foresight GCQuad that's around $15,000. So launch monitors obviously are a huge range, and that's why I separated those out. Obviously, if I wasn't, running this review channel and whatnot, I would only stick with one. So a lot to think about whenever you're putting together your whole simulator. I like to ask people like what their goal is with their simulator. Is it for game improvement or is it for entertainment? And maybe it's a mix of both, but which one is most important to you? For me, mostly it was game improvement. And when it comes to people like that, I kind of suggest, hey, start with the launch monitor that you think is right for you and then see what's left in your budget for the rest of it. If you really want a high-end launch monitor, I would say go for it and maybe go with a net and TV setup versus the whole projector enclosure stuff. If you're like, hey, I'm not a professional golfer, I don't need that. I just want something that I can play with friends on and have like a really cool man cave. Well, then you can justify spending more money on 4K and all the nice finishing touches with flooring and all that. You need to think about those things when you're planning because it can be overwhelming. It's like, hey, what's your end goal? Is it for practice or entertainment? And then you can kind of work through your budget from there. If you need any help making decisions with this kind of stuff or just want some advice, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to help you with any questions on stuff that I have or just general knowledge on putting a simulator together. And like I said, I will have links down in the video description to all of these products so that hopefully you can source them if you like that track light or whatever else for your simulator. So hope this was helpful. Looking forward to putting together some stuff on the next version of this simulator. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see that, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.